Well, we'll get started. This workshop is being recorded, so if you want to return to some of the things that we're chatting about, you can get in contact with us for the recording. If you're joining us on Zoom, you'll automatically receive this recording. I am going to share my screen. I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Marla, and I own Inward Office. We're based out of Rochester, New York. Some of you here in the Zoom room may know us from the companies that have sponsored your participation in classes like this, but we teach a whole range of mind-body tools. We do daily fitness classes, yoga classes, meditation, mindfulness, myofascial ball release, all kinds of things to connect you with your body so that you have many ways and many tools to relieve stress. And around this time, around holiday time, it's always a nice thing. Hello, welcome, welcome. Around this holiday time, it is nice to talk about mindful eating. All right. And yep, just as a reminder, just keep yourself on mute if you're here in the Zoom room with me. Um, so it's nice to talk about mindful eating because so many of us have unmindful or mindless habits around eating. And so many of our mind body tools are just about getting in contact with our ability to be self aware. And so I'm going to share a PowerPoint that if you're a visual learner, it may help you. Let's see, kind of embody some of these skills that we're going to learn today. So for our first exercise, we're just going to arrive here. So I'll encourage you to find a comfortable spot, sit back in your seat, or even lay down if you have that available to you. I've noticed for myself, even during a busy workday, if I lay down horizontal, it's a very quick way for me to relax. And there is something biochemically going on when we lay horizontal that induces that relaxation very quickly. So taking a moment to arrive here. What does that mean, arriving here? What we're going to do is just feel into the feet and the seat. And notice the contact of the body in its seat. Notice the warmth and the pressure. Notice any areas that you're leaning into. Perhaps there's more pressure on the left side or the right side. Perhaps you notice that you're pitching forward a little bit or pitching back. Take just a moment to assess this contact with your support. And then notice breathing. The breath that's always there, day in and day out. Breathing in, feeling the belly and chest expand. Breathing out, feeling the belly and the chest relax. Inhale, belly and chest expand. Exhale, chest falls, belly draws in. 2 more breaths with full attention. And then notice what thoughts or emotions that you're feeling right now. And rather than engage them, simply be aware that they're here with us. And then take a moment to appreciate. appreciating the feet that got you here, the company that sponsored you here, the day of work, the food you ate. Just find something in this moment to savor and appreciate. Using your senses, so making this as real as possible. And then let a small smile creep across your lips. And then take another breath in and out. And we'll come back to our space here online. So, this is a nice practice, just a really short couple minute practice to bring us into this moment. And that's something you can do at any transition time that you have. Perhaps you're beginning a meal, like we'll practice today. Perhaps you're simply starting your workday, ending your workday, feeling overwhelmed. A simple paying attention to your breath and your body and your support is a very useful practice. So I welcome you again to those of you that are just joining. And I just wanted to let you know we're going to try to stay on mute for this, but I welcome your participation in the chat. The reason that we're staying on mute is because we are also live streaming to LinkedIn. So every so often we do a free class on LinkedIn, and this is one of them. All right. So I would love to hear in the chat if there was something specifically that you appreciated during your meditation. And I'll read those in just a moment. So mindfulness. Mindfulness is the base of our mindful eating. So what is mindfulness? Now, this definition comes from John Kabat-Zinn. John Kabat-Zinn is an American man who brought mindfulness to the medical community through the University of Massachusetts and has been really foundational since the 80s, 90s in publicizing and promoting mindfulness as a tool for our health and our well-being. His definition is that with mindfulness, we're paying attention on purpose in the present moment while suspending judgment. It's a very robust definition to me, one that goes a little bit further than or has some of the subtleties of the original Pali word sati. And this is paying attention. So we're using our minds to fully bring our attention with a decision on purpose into this moment. And the way we do it, like in our meditation, is through these tactile directions, feeling our feet, feeling our seat, feeling our breath. These kinds of tactile directions that I, as a teacher, give you bring you into right now, right here. Often our thoughts are going to the future and the past, but eating really serves as a great experience of mindfulness because eating is only really ever happening right now. All right. So we're making a choice to come here into the present moment, and we're doing this while suspending judgment. So suspending judgment is keeping an attitude of curiosity during using our lens of mindfulness. So mindfulness isn't necessarily a technique, but a lens through which we look, or something that we foster through an activity like meditation. Now, the judgment is often what we do. We put a value judgment, a right or a wrong, on something that often doesn't have a right or a wrong. So in the case of mindful eating, you can think about a brownie. Sometimes, let's say we're diabetic or we have dessert every day and we've been gaining weight regularly. We might look at the brownie and say, oh, you're a bad brownie. It's wrong for me to eat it. It's wrong that it's here. But there's nothing inherently wrong about the brownie. If we look a little bit layered deeper, actually what's going on is that this brownie isn't supporting us in our desire to manage our sugar intake or our weight. Okay. So think for a moment, and I would love for you to answer in the chat. What is something that you do mindfully or mindlessly? So, what is something, and you can write in the chat like mindful and then write an activity, mindless, write an activity, whatever pops to mind. So, let's think about what do we do mindfully or mindlessly? What do we do mindfully or mindlessly? Why don't you respond and let me know about driving? Do we tend to do driving mindfully or mindlessly? You get in the car, you go to yeah, thank you, mindlessly. You go from your house to your work, let's say, or your house to the grocery store. Often we do it mindlessly, right? We arrive at our destination. We're like, oh my goodness, my mind just wandered the whole time. Eating, I say with eating, we get a variety of answers. Some people say that they do it mindlessly. Some people say they do it mindfully. But I want to know, when you eat, are you fully paying attention to the taste and the texture of your food? Thanks. Thank you. Mindfully might be preparing healthy meals for the day. Mindlessly might be eating junk after dinner. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes our food choices, we can have a direct correlation. Yeah. Think about when you're washing dishes or doing laundry. I know for myself, my mind wanders when I do these habitual day after day tasks. And so we're not saying that one is worse than the other. It's not worse to be mindful. It's not worse, or sorry, it's not better to be mindful or worse to be mindless. What we want to bring our attention to is when we're choosing to be mindful and we're not choosing to be mindless. Now, if you look at the research of Dr. Amisha Jha out of the University of Miami in Florida, she talks about different states of mind. For instance, the wandering mind that we have when we're driving, or the wandering mind we have maybe we're walking the dog, or like I said, doing my laundry or dishes. And this is a normal state of the mind that we need. It is an essential way that our mind needs to function, a daydreaming state, a mind wandering state. But let's say we have a habit that we need to change. And our habit is something that we've practiced very well over many years, and it's become mindless. Like if you think about putting on your shoes or putting on your jacket, it's not like we're 1 years old trying to figure out which arm it goes in or which shoe fits the right foot. We do those mindlessly. Now, if all of a sudden we have a broken arm, it becomes a very mindful intention or mindful action to put on a jacket. So, in the case of habits, for instance, our habit of eating, we may need to put this lens of mindfulness on it to be able to change what we do. So, one way to create more mindfulness in your day to day life is to use curiosity about your sensory experience. So, and we can do this very easily with food. For instance, if I'm doing my laundry, another random activity, my sensory experience would be holding the shirt, feeling the texture of the shirt, smelling the laundry, shaking it, and feeling the weight of it. Okay, so as soon as we get into the senses, we help with our own mindfulness. All right, so mindful eating. Mindful eating is paying attention to your food and the experience of eating it while suspending judgment. So we're doing this with curiosity, without judgment, right? So the opposite of judgment is curiosity. So we're not only paying attention to that brownie, but also when we bring the brownie towards us, what is our experience of eating that brownie? So there's an exercise that Jon Kabat-Zinn does in his mindfulness-based MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction course, which is the mindfulness of eating a raisin. So if you think about a single raisin, right, it's tiny. There is usually when you're eating a raisin, you don't just eat just one. You'll have like a small handful or a mixture of things. And so when we mindfully eat a raisin, we look at the color of the raisin, we feel the raisin, we put it in our palm, we listen to the sound, we do all kinds of sensory observations about that raisin. And when we dial down to that slowness and that smallness, we begin to notice more. Okay. And what mindful eating, and this program in particular, which I'll introduce in just a little bit, what it really brings to light is our inner wisdom. Okay, so you see on the slide here, it says inner wisdom and outer knowledge, right? Our outer knowledge, the things that would fit into our outer knowledge is, let's say I'm a nutritionist or a dietitian, and I talk to you about the nutritional content of the food, talk about burning calories, balancing the calories you ingest with the calories you expend. I might talk about the macros and the micronutrients. And I might train you on how to manage your own health condition, like diabetes or a bone density health condition. And so those kinds of outer knowledges are often what we go to professionals for. We research through books, recipes, things like that. Now, the inner wisdom is the part that, at Inward Office, we like to focus on because a lot of us are just really disconnected from the messages our body is sending us. And so, what fits under this category of inner wisdom? Here's a few ideas. Our hunger level. What is our hunger level? Okay. Our fullness level. How full do we feel? And I had a hard time understanding what that meant, but think about if you chug 2 liters of water. You might feel very full physically, but you might not feel nutritionally satisfied. Right? So a feeling of fullness. Some people eat until they feel full, right? And until they have that feeling of like bloatedness, right? Fullness, they may not think that they're done eating. Thirst, right? Has anyone here been thirsty and then eaten because they were thirsty? Right? It's a good question to investigate. Am I thirsty or am I hungry? Our emotional charge of our food. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our tips, but what emotions are associated with certain foods? Our expectations and our thoughts. Okay, so those are very intimate things, right? Perhaps you have a favorite food that you know is your late night emotional eating food, right? And you have an emotional attachment to it, or you have a thought. This was the food I always had in high school when I got sad. Okay, and that's the food I'm going to buy. There are a lot of subtleties with that inner wisdom that only you can answer, that only you know. And that's what we want to investigate. So mindful eating becomes this middle way that's between restricted dieting, which is their rules, right? The person that made up the diet, that's their rules, and mindless overeating, which is anything goes, right? So we want a flexible way to make decisions. And I believe that mindful eating really is that, the flexible choice. And so when you begin to mindfully eat, you're not just thinking about what you're eating. You're also thinking about, why are you eating? Am I hungry? Right? You're thinking about, how am I eating? Did I put my fork down between bites? Did I set my burrito down between bites? Am I always eating on the go? And when am I eating? Perhaps I'm always having to eat at the prescribed lunch break. I only have 12 till 12:30, and that's the only time I eat. Right? When am I eating? So a lot of these are just ingrained habits, things that we've practiced for a long time. And I welcome again in the chat any thoughts or comments you have about inner wisdom, outer knowledge, I am monitoring the Zoom room chats. I'm not going to monitor um, the LinkedIn chats until after our class. So there are many studies that have been done on mindful eating, and the one of them is mindful eating for binge eaters, which is what our program is based on. So I studied with Andrea Lieberstein, who her and Jean Kristeller worked together on the MB Eat program for professionals. And Jean Kristeller is a Indiana State University professor who has studied since the 1980s folks that have dysregulated eating habits and teaching them or experimenting with self-regulation tools. And so she's coupled mindfulness for binge eating disorders. And the NIH funded a 12-week study that she did with a group of folks who were characterized as binge eaters with an average BMI of 40. And that would mean me at 5'6" would be 250 pounds. That's an average, that's a BMI of 40. And so what they found was that binge eaters they have a couple of, there's a couple of things that make up binge eaters. One of them is starting to eat when you're not hungry, eating until uncomfortably full, being unable to stop yourself from eating, and having feelings of regret or disgust after eating. So if we take apart each of those four, maybe each of us are not doing that in a single sitting. We're not starting to eat when we're not hungry at every sitting, but sometimes we do, right? If our lunch break is at 12 and we only have 12 till 12:30, we may not be hungry, but that's the time we have to eat, right? We might eat until uncomfortably full on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, right? So there's a lot about the characteristics of binge eating that's adaptable to our whole American lifestyle. Feeling disgust afterwards, that might be after we had a couple extra desserts and then we leave the party and say, oh, maybe it wasn't such a good idea to have all of those. All right, so Jean Kristeller found that that binge eaters were disengaged from their internal self-regulation, and they were overly cued by external cues. So they were paying more attention to what was outside of them than the messages they were receiving inside. So that would mean, I don't know if you've ever gone to Macaroni Grill, or a lot of restaurants do this. They give you this plate of food, and it is a tremendous amount of food. And you think, oh, okay, this is one portion size, right? And it's not. It's not. Like if you knew the calorie content or what have you, maybe you should only eat 1/3 of it. All right. So if I ate the whole plate of food that the restaurant served me, that would be being cued by somebody else's decision. Instead of saying, maybe after 5 bites, oh, am I full? Okay. So all of us, I think, can use this skill at one time or another. And then the number 2, 3, and 4 here are other research studies have found that when folks regularly do mindful eating, they have a decrease in anxiety and depression around food, that they lose weight and keep it off, and they have improvements in type 2 diabetes. All right, so why are we doing mindful eating? And these are personal observations. It really does help us build self-awareness and awareness of our own body. It gives us a flexible way to make decisions that can possibly work long term instead of being one of those people that goes on and off diets, right? You're on a diet, you're really regulating yourself well, and then you go off it, and all of a sudden you're binging all the foods you couldn't have, right? And you can possibly end unwanted habits. I know when I went through the program during our training program, I had to go through the program too, that one of the habits I noticed I have was eating after 9 p.m. If I was downstairs in my house near the kitchen, I would definitely have a sweet treat after 9 p.m. Well, when I did the program, I said, okay, what's a strategy I can employ that will either keep me away from the kitchen or get me on the way to bed so that I don't overeat after 9 p.m. All right. So we look here with mindfulness at our habits, and then we make decisions on how to change them. And then the last one here is that we can still enjoy our favorite foods. Instead of cutting them out, we keep them in and we find more pleasure in maybe smaller bites. So Jean Kristeller's book, if you're interested, is called The Joy of Half a Cookie. And The Joy of Half a Cookie is one of those books that highlights the fact that, well, it has bits and pieces of our whole program, but it highlights that title, highlights the fact that we can have half the cookie and still fully enjoy it. In fact, our enjoyment of the food, especially sweet foods, decreases over time because of the numbness that our taste buds encounter. So our taste buds are highly enlivened and enjoying when we have smaller amounts. So here's a tip for you. If you're at a buffet, get just a tablespoon of each of the foods, and then you really can enjoy each of the tastes of the food instead of being stuck just having that taste kind of decrease throughout the meal. Okay. So just have a tablespoon of the food and go around and even have just one bite of each of the individual foods and then repeat. And your taste buds will really be excited. Okay. What? So, just a little fun break here. During Thanksgiving, our four basic food groups are more, a little more, a lot more, and too much. So, culturally, in America and many countries, we use food to celebrate. And we're not looking to change that with mindful eating, that it's a way for us to connect, to celebrate. But sometimes, if our food groups are more, a little more, a lot, and too much, that maybe we need to relook at our habits. So here are 4 mindful eating tips. Right. The first one is make a choice to eat. You may think about, how did you eat your last meal? Or maybe, how did you eat your Thanksgiving meal? Was it with attention? Was it on the go? Was it distracted and talking with people? Did you even taste it? I'll tell you, I've ruined a lot of meals by mindfully eating with folks. Okay. How did you eat your last meal? And if you don't like your answer of how you ate your last meal, what needs to change? Right? Are you overly cued by the external? When someone hands you a plate, do you think that that's the portion size? Another little tip is to make your plate smaller. Instead of using a full dinner plate, use a side plate, like a side salad plate or a small bowl. That can cue you to decrease your portion size. So when you go to a holiday gathering, here is the tip. Choose before you go into the gathering what you will be eating. So for instance, let's say I know that I'm going to a gathering where there's going to be appetizers, a main meal, a dessert, and drinks, alcoholic and soda. Before I walk in, I may say to myself, okay, I'm going to have just a very small amount of appetizer. I'm going to have a protein-heavy main course. I'm going to have half the size of what I think I should have for dessert, and I'll have one alcoholic drink. If I make those decisions in advance, I have something that I can rely on, right? If I am the type of person who's overly cued by my external circumstances, I might get to that, maybe it's a buffet, get to that party, see all the good foods, put everything on there that I want, because that's my habit, right? My choices make patterns, and my patterns make habits. And so if I want to change the habit of how I approach this gathering, Perhaps I make the decision before food is in the room. Okay. So, how can you choose before you even get there? Second one, what nourishment do I need? It's not always physical nourishment that we need, it's not always food. So, let's take an example of it's been a really long and hard week. I invite a friend out for dinner. I am seeking connection and understanding about how hard this week has been. So, although we went out to dinner, it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to eat a lot. My primary need in going out to eat with her is that I want connection and understanding. So, this can be where we tend to be emotionally eating. We're actually seeking one of these needs that's on the slide, and we're replacing that need with food. So imagine if you're wanting to connect with your child or your grandchild and you decide to make cookies with them. But perhaps you don't need to eat cookies. But it's your way of creating love and presence with your child. Okay. Perhaps you're every week going out Friday night to a new restaurant. It's a different restaurant every week because it's your need for adventure. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a huge amount of food, but that activity is actually your expression of your need for adventure. And so this list of words, love, connection, respect, presence, these come from, I've pulled them from NVC, nonviolent communication, which is a whole nother system of internal and interpersonal communication that helps us dial into what our deeper needs are. Okay, so you might ask yourself when it comes to a certain situation where you're looking to change, is there a different type of nourishment that I need? And how do we know that? How do I know it's adventure or love or warmth or understanding that I need? And you might ask yourself, what nourishment do I need before you eat? Right? So when you sit down, when you pause to pray or simply appreciate your food, perhaps you ask yourself, what nourishment do I need? All right. And this is one that's kind of inherent to mindful eating, which is focusing on the food. How do we focus on the food? We use our senses. We use all of our tactile senses, sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touching to engage with our food. For some of us, distraction is the biggest obstacle. We watch TV, we go on our phone, we talk with our companion while we eat, and suddenly we finish the whole bag of chips. Well, instead, savor each bite. And then what happens? Well, you'll have to answer that question for yourself, but sometimes we find that we eat less when we're savoring each little bite. And then the last one is eat when you're hungry. And this is where we're going to do our exercise. For many of us, we're disconnected from our internal hunger signals. So I want you to ask yourself right now, what is my hunger signal? And I would love for you, if you know what your hunger signal is, go ahead and write it in the chat. What is your hunger signal? And it's possible that your hunger signal today is different than the one tomorrow. Your hunger signal in the morning might be different than the one in the evening. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes. Okay, so in the chat, we wrote our hunger signal. A couple people wrote stress. And so I love that because where's the stress coming from? Stress comes and then we choose food as our expression, right? What I want to draw our attention to is that we have a signal in our body that's telling us that we need physical nourishment. And that might be a growling tummy. It might be lightheadedness. It might be shaky. I remember I used to get shaky when I was pregnant and I would be hungry. It might be this feeling of emptiness in the stomach. It might be a light pressure somewhere. I want you to investigate that. So then maybe it's the next meal, maybe it's tomorrow morning. Don't eat until you're hungry. Physically, you feel it. And see what signal is there. What is that feeling in the pit of your stomach? What is that feeling in your brain or in your hands or in your legs? Right? How does your body feel that depletion of energy? And like I said, from my experience for doing these teaching these mind body techniques for 17 years now, is that we are really disconnected from the signals that our body sends us. We're really disconnected from them. So, what we're going to do is actually a body awareness meditation. And the underpinning of the whole mindful eating program that I studied with Jean Kristeller really is meditation. So, the practice that we do every day is meditation because it connects us with these very subtle signals that our body is always sending us, right? Our body is always sending us signals. So, for instance, I mean, we can think about physical pain. Maybe you've had the experience where all of a sudden you have this terrible pain in your low back. But maybe your body's been sending you little signals over a period of time, but you haven't noticed them until all of a sudden there's a big one. Okay, so what we're going to do is this meditation, pretty short one, scanning through the body, noticing the sensations in the body, and then we're going to do a hunger awareness meditation. So the first one where we're scanning through the body, it's simply a tool for you to refer back to create that brain to body connection. It's your brain noticing what's going on in the body, and you're just building that pathway. Okay. And then the second part of it is we're going to tune into our hunger and hunger as a physical sensation. And the hunger awareness part of it is kind of like a mini meditation that you could do before any meal so that you make perhaps more wise choices about how to eat your meal. All right. So come to a comfortable position and you can feel free to lay down, sit down, any comfortable position. And if you want to adjust anything in the room, lighting, turning off phone, beeping, closing the door, the window, finding a supportive way to sit or lay. Take 3 deep breaths, letting the full weight of the body be supported by your chair or the ground. And then bring your attention to the steady inhale and exhale. The breath that's always there. Mentally saying breathing in, mentally saying breathing out. And then let's bring attention to our face, noticing the forehead, the space between the eyebrows, the corners of the eyes, the cheeks, the jaw, letting the jaw loosen and the tongue rest on the floor of the mouth. Bringing attention to the neck, the shoulders, the tops of the shoulders, the back of the shoulders, and then the front of the shoulders as it meets the chest and the belly. Breathing in, feeling belly and chest move, and breathing out. And bringing attention to the right arm, from the shoulder down to the fingertips, feeling the right arm. We're just spotlighting our attention on the arm, not moving it, remaining still. And then bringing attention to the left arm, from the shoulder down the arm to the hand. And taking a big breath into the arms. Letting those shoulders relax and the arms heavy. And then shifting attention down the body to, we'll follow the body, chest, belly, and then down to the right leg, the right hip, thigh, knee, lower leg, and foot. And then the left hip, thigh, knee, lower leg, foot. And the back of the body, buttocks, low back, middle back, upper back, back of the neck and head. And then notice any sensation of the body, anything that draws your attention. And mentally describe that sensation. Tingly, tight, heavy, pressure, warm. And then shift attention to one other place in the body where you're experiencing any sensation. And notice if you're labeling it good or bad, right or wrong. And notice it as pure sensation. So mentally describe it. Sharp, dull, free, open, heavy. And then let's do a little hunger awareness meditation. So if we were doing this before a meal, we would very quickly notice any sensation in the body, breathing in and out, any tension. And take a couple cleansing breaths. And then ask yourself, how hungry am I? On a scale from 0 to 10, 0 is not at all hungry. And 10 is the most hungry I've ever been. How hungry am I? 0 is not at all hungry, and 10 is the most hungry I've ever been. There's no right or wrong answer. You're tapping into the inner wisdom. And then ask yourself, how do I know this? What has informed this number? How do I know this? Right. And then when you're feeling ready, take a couple of breaths and slowly come back to our room. And it seems that I got a little verbose today, and I do want to mention that it is the end of our session. So if you do have to hop off, um, it is 4:45 Eastern. But for those of you that can stay, here's some of the reflection questions on our body awareness. And I would love if you answered in the chat, what sensations did you experience? What was surprising? What was new? And what did you learn about your hunger level? So feel free to answer in the chat. And I will stay on in the Zoom room if you have additional questions or thoughts that's off of the recording and the streaming. But I do want to thank you. We do have a longer program if you are interested at your workplace. Generally, we only teach to workplaces, but if you're an individual who is curious about learning more mindful eating techniques, we're happy to help you. But generally, we do a intro workshop and then a 3-class session or 3-workshop session to teach people these skills of reconnecting with their body, learning about their hunger signals, how to decrease the sugar that they're taking in by savoring and having smaller bites. Oh, and thank you so much. And like I said, I'll stay in the Zoom room, but we are going to end the stream.